We spend our entire lives chasing it. We wake up in the morning thinking about it. We make decisions because of it. We sacrifice things and people and years, all in the hope that somewhere just ahead, just around the next corner, just past the next achievement, happiness is waiting for us. But what if the chase itself is the very thing keeping it away? What if the faster you run toward happiness, the further it moves from your reach? This is the story of a fox who learned that lesson, and unlike most lessons, this one came too late. Long ago, deep inside a forest where the light came through the trees in long golden ribbons every morning, there lived a fox. He was not an extraordinary fox, not the fastest or the strongest or the most cunning, but he had something far more valuable than any of those things. He had a warm den tucked beneath the roots of an ancient oak tree, dry in winter, cool in summer, perfectly his own. He had a family waiting for him every evening when the hunt was done, a mate whose eyes were kind, and cubs who ran to meet him the moment they heard his footsteps. He had friends who hunted alongside him each morning, who shared food without being asked, who sat beside him under the open sky at night and made the darkness feel smaller. The forest was his home, and his home was enough, or it should have been. One morning, the fox woke earlier than usual. The sun was just beginning to lift itself above the tree line, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. He stepped out of his den, stretched, and breathed in the cool air, and then he saw it, a dark shape moving across the ground just ahead of him. It shifted and shimmered like water catching light. It stretched and contracted like something alive. It moved with a kind of strange, fluid grace that the fox had never seen in anything before. He watched it, mesmerized. He had no name for what it was. He had never seen anything like it in all his years in the forest, and in that moment, the way curious creatures sometimes do, he decided it must be something magical, something rare, something powerful, and a thought formed in his chest like a warm ember. If I catch that, I will find what I have always been looking for. I will find perfect happiness. So he ran. The shadow moved ahead of him across the meadow, and he followed it, his paws light on the grass. His heart lifted with the certainty that today was the day everything would finally be complete. He ran faster. The shadow stayed just ahead, always the same distance, always just beyond the reach of his outstretched paws. He leapt over rocks. The shadow leaped too. He splashed through a shallow river, cold water spraying at his flanks. The shadow waited calmly on the other side. He pushed harder. That first day passed without him noticing. Then the second, then the third. Somewhere behind him, his cubs were playing alone in front of the den, looking down the path for a father who wasn't coming. His mate called his name into the trees at dusk. Her voice carried through the forest, clear and quiet and worried. The fox heard it, somewhere deep beneath the rushing of his own breath, but he didn't stop. He told himself he would go back soon. He told himself this wouldn't take long. He told himself that when he caught the shadow, when happiness was finally in his hands, then he would return, and everything would be better, and the time he had lost would be worth it. He kept running. Weeks passed. The fox ran through thorns that tore at his skin. He climbed rocky cliffs that left his paws bleeding. He crossed wide valleys that stole the breath from his lungs. Other foxes rested under the stars in the evening. They shared meals and told stories and laughed at small things and went home to the ones who loved them. But not him. He had no time for any of that. Happiness was ahead. It was always just ahead. He just needed to be faster. He just needed to want it more. Months passed. The fox grew thin. His coat, once thick and bright, lost its luster. His eyes, once sharp and clear, became dull with exhaustion. His legs ached constantly now. Not the satisfying ache of a good day's work, but the deep, hollow ache of a body being asked to give more than it has left. And still he chased. Because stopping felt like giving up. Because turning back felt like admitting failure. Because the shadow was always there. Always just ahead. Always seeming to promise that this time, if he just pushed a little harder, he would finally close the distance. Then one evening, at the end of a day he could barely remember, the fox found himself standing at the edge of a high cliff. His legs were shaking beneath him. His heart was beating too slowly. He had not eaten in days. He had not slept in longer than he could count. He looked out over the edge, and there was the shadow again. still just in front of him. Still dancing, still promising. He stood at the very edge of everything and looked at it, and something in him said, "This is your last chance." If he didn't catch it now, he never would. So the fox gathered every last piece of strength remaining in his body and leaped. His paws hit the ground. On the other side of the shadow, he stood absolutely still, and then he looked. Down, there was nothing there, just dirt, just cold. Stone, just the ordinary ground. The shadow was gone. The fox lifted his head, confused, searching, and then he felt it, the warmth on his back. He turned around slowly. The sun was behind him, low and orange in the evening sky. Exactly where it always was at this hour, and the fox understood. The shadow he had spent months chasing across meadows and rivers and cliffs and valleys was his own shadow. He had been running from himself. He had been chasing himself, round and round, faster and faster, fleeing from the very life he was trying to find. He stood at the edge of that cliff for a long time. The weight of it settled over him slowly, not like a blow, but like weather moving in all those days, all those months, all that distance covered for nothing. The happiness he had been so certain was somewhere ahead of him had never been ahead of him at all. It had been behind him the whole time, in the warm den under the old oak tree, in his mate's quiet eyes at the end of a long day, in the sound of his cubs playing in the leaves outside, in the easy companionship of friends who asked nothing of him but his presence, in the simple, unremarkable, irreplaceable texture of an ordinary life, which he had walked away from without ever understanding what he had. He turned toward home. Hope moved through him like a thin flame. Maybe they're still there, he told himself. Maybe it's not too late. But when he finally pushed through the trees and came to the place where his den had been, he stopped. Dried leaves covered the entrance. Spiderwebs stretched across the doorway, undisturbed, thick with time. No footprints, no smell of family, no sound of cubs. He called out into the silence. His voice echoed back to him alone. He called again. Nothing answered. His family had waited as long as they could. His friends had moved on to new seasons. The life he had left behind had simply continued without him, the way life always does. The fox sat down in front of his empty den. The forest was quiet around him. The stars came out one by one above the trees, and in the stillness of that long night, he understood something that no amount of running had ever been able to teach him. The shadow was nothing. The life he lost was everything. We are not so different from that fox. Most of us spend some portion of our lives in a version of that same chase, convinced that happiness is somewhere we haven't arrived yet, that it lives in the job we don't have, the body we don't have, the relationship we haven't found, the number in our bank account that we haven't reached. We look ahead so constantly, so urgently that we forget to look around, and the people who love us, the small moments that are quietly extraordinary, the ordinary days that we will one day wish we could return to. Keep passing, keep passing, keep passing. Happiness is not a place you get to. It is not a thing you catch. It is not waiting for you on the other side of some imaginary finish line. Happiness is not something you find. It is something you notice. It lives in the person sitting across from you right now, in the meal in front of you, in the sound of someone you love moving around in the next room, in the morning light coming through the window before the day has asked anything of you yet, in the 10,000 small and ordinary things that you are surrounded by every single day, that you overlook completely because you are too busy looking ahead. The fox had everything he needed. He had it every morning when he stepped out of his den. He just never saw it. He looked ahead instead of around him, and by the time he finally stopped, it was already gone. Don't make the fox's mistake. The life you are living right now, with all its imperfections and its frustrations and its ordinary Tuesday afternoons, is the life, not the one coming, not the one you're planning, not the one that begins when everything finally falls into place. This one, the one that is happening right now, while you are reading this, while the people who love you are somewhere nearby, while another day is passing. Stop chasing the shadow. Stop waiting for happiness to arrive like a package you ordered, as if it will show up one day and you will finally feel complete. It is already here. It has been here all along. You just have to be still enough and present enough and grateful enough to see that if this story reached something inside you today, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is running hard and forgetting to look around. Someone who deserves this reminder that the life they are chasing might already be in their hands. Subscribe for more stories like this one. Stories about the things that actually matter and the quiet truths that change.